Digital boost.
All right, we are streaming. We are live. Kia ora, Tato. Welcome. Welcome back to Digital Boost. We've got another Q&A here today. And today, I'm Georgia Hatzis. I always forget to say that. I'm getting to a point where I'm not saying that anymore. Like I'm just assuming everybody knows who I am. My name is right there. It's right there. I'm Georgia Hatzis. I'm your host today. Today, I get the pleasure of hosting my friend, who is soon to be your friend, Emily Wragg. Emily is from Digital Boost. She is our UX UI lead here. Emily is the one responsible for undertaking the research, strategy, design, testing of our digital products. It's to make sure that you, our users, are getting your needs met in the best way possible. So Emily is also the forerunner for Checkable. If you remember, we did a couple of Q&As last year with Emily. If you didn't get to see those on Checkable. So if you didn't get to see those, you're curious about Checkable, you need to learn more about it. It is that free tool on our website, on our platform. Go check out those Q&As that we did with Emily then. Today, we are going to be looking at some of the industry jargon that you might have seen around, but not quite know what it is. UX, for example, I'm not going to tell you what that is. That is my secret for today. Emily will reveal all of that to you. And it's funny because Emily and I were talking yesterday a little bit about it, like, oh, why do people really need to know this? If you don't need to know the jargon specifically for your business, you are going to interact with other businesses. You're going to interact with other companies that will use this jargon. So it's good to know. We are specifically honing in on UX today, and you're going to get to see what that means in regards to your business. So just a little housekeeping. If you have questions, pop them into the Q&A function here. I will be fielding that for Emily. Any questions that pop up. No questions are silly. All questions are relevant, as long as it has to do with what we're talking about. You can email me for personal questions. And if you are streaming in Facebook or LinkedIn or our YouTube channel, please pop anything into the comments there. I will be keeping an eye on that. So without further ado, Emily, take it away. Welcome.
Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, everybody. We've got a fun session today on UX and how it actually relates to your business and how you can use it to make your business and your website even better for your customers. So let me just share this. Hopefully you can see this all right. Georgia, you'll let me know if not.
That looks great. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So first of all, I thought we'd start off with UX and some of the jargon that surrounds this kind of area of business. So today we're talking about a world of acronyms that you may or may not have seen, but you might come across at some point. We'll talk about who are your users, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and we'll also touch on accessibility a little bit later. So there are dozens of acronyms that surround this area of business, UX or user experience. You might have seen some of these: CTA, call to action, UXD is user experience design, HCI, human computer interaction. So some of them mean the same thing, some of them are slightly different. But today, I just wanted to focus on a few of them because they are all connected, but they do have slight differences. So starting at the kind of highest level, we've got CX, which you might have heard of, which is customer experience. So this is looking at the overall journey your customer takes with a brand or a product. So this is right from the very beginning where they might see an advert, they might come through and have a look on your website, they might be looking at your social media posts. This could be once they receive your product, if you're shipping it to them, maybe any interactions they have with you personally in a store or with customer support, all the way through to using your product or service, offboarding and beyond. So after they've used your product or service, what happens next? So it's managing that whole journey of your customer and making sure it's a really consistent experience across all those touch points. So does the look and feel of your brand feel consistent across those touch points? Is the language you're using consistent? And we're trying to build customer satisfaction and loyalty by giving your customers a really great experience at every one of those touch points. User experience sits underneath customer experience, but it's quite its own lane. So when we're talking about a user experience, it focuses more on digital experiences, so specifically a website or an app. And the difference when we talk about a user versus a customer is a user is someone who is literally using your online product. So they're scrolling and clicking through your website. And how can we make that experience really seamless and easy and smooth so that they can find what they want on your website, make a purchase, find information, whatever it might be that they're doing, in a really easy way. So user experience focuses on the usability of your website. So how easy is it to use and understand? Do they need instructions to know what to do, or can it just be really intuitive? Accessibility, so can everybody of all abilities use your website? Efficiency, so can they come and do what they want to do really quickly? And enjoyment of using it. So is it a fun experience? Is it a really nice thing for them to interact with? Then we've got UI, which often gets coupled with UX. You might hear UX, UI, UI, UX. UI is user interface. So this focuses more on the visual aspect of a website. So colors and buttons and icons and layouts, and all those aspects help create a really intuitive and easy to use product or website, because it gives your users clues and keys on what they need to do next. So, for example, having consistent button size, shape, color, and labeling across your site makes it really easy for users to know what to do. And the same for layouts, having a really logical, clear layout and hierarchy of information makes it really easy for users to find what they want and do what they need to do. So UX and UI often go hand in hand, but there is slight differences. And then finally, we've got IA, or information architecture. And this is around the organization and the structure and labeling of the content on your site. So we often think about this around navigation and menus, filtering, any way that it can make the information on your site really easy to find. So grouping of maybe products on a site into logical categories, that's really important. And it's really great to sort of run anything like grouping of products into categories past some users or past some other people to make sure it's collectively known that that's where they sit. It's not just where you think that they should sit. So and also having clearly labeled buttons and logically presented information. So that's about the architecture and the structure of your site. So hopefully that kind of breaks those acronyms down, but also you can kind of see how from the very top level of the funnel, it's the customer experience for the whole journey. And then user experience is mostly focused on website. User interface is more around the visual aspects of a site, and then information architecture is how it's actually structured. So today we're going to talk about user experience.
We have a quick question
Sure.
here. And I think it's going to get answered, but I'm just going to throw it out there anyway. How to balance the challenge of getting very high SEO while not damaging UX UI?
It's a great question, and sometimes great UX can enhance your SEO. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those aspects, but it might be, for example, making sure that any images on your site have alt text or alternative text. So making a really nice description of what that image is not only good user experience, but that actually helps boost your SEO. Same with headings and having a logical hierarchy of the content on your website. So having an obvious heading, subheading, body copy. That's really easy for your users to understand groupings of information and clusters of information and to help them scan the page easily. But that's also good for boosting SEO and and search engines like Google rate that type of thing highly. So I think there is some information on Checkable that you can look into on SEO and also in customer experience. There's a whole section on customer experience in Checkable, so you can run past some of those things and see how they might affect your site. But yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And there is sometimes some juggling between balancing UX and other aspects such as SEO. But you also want to make sure, I think at the heart of it, that it's a really great experience for your users, and things like keyword stuffing into copy on your site might work for a little bit for SEO, but sometimes you then get marked down because it actually isn't a good experience for your users either, because it becomes kind of gobbledygook and jargon. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and the follow-up for that is, are there tools to measure the UX, UI, IA of your website?
It is a good question. Probably not so much running your website through and saying, is the UX good? But there's aspects that you can check and you can run. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can measure what's working later. So maybe we leave it till there, and if that isn't answered, then we can jump back into that and talk about tools as well.
Great, thank you, Emily.
So when we're talking about a user experience, a user might be having all kinds of feelings in their purchasing decision about purchasing your product or service. And if we have this scale on the left-hand side, we've got extreme delight, which is what we always want our customers to have and our user to have. And at the bottom, we've got extreme frustration. So any given experience, a user might feel a range of emotions across the experience. And we can look at this from kind of a bird's eye view. This could be looking at a user's experience across their journey of using your whole website, or maybe it might just be a specific area like the shopping cart experience. There might be a range of emotions and feelings that happen in that process. But basically, what we want is to bring our users up to this top level, to have a really great experience all of the time. And now a user isn't always on, a customer isn't always on your website. They're doing other things in their life while they're thinking about making those decisions. But there will be things that you can do on your website or in your communications that kind of helps allay any of their fears or helps nudge them to purchase or helps bring them back again, just by understanding what your customers are thinking and feeling. There's a whole bunch of great resources on Digital Boost around this. There's ones around customer empathy mapping, so you can kind of work out what your customers might be thinking about and how you can work that out. But for example, imagine you are a mechanic and your customer's car has broken down. They'll be going through a range of emotions and feelings about this. And how can you make sure that when they come to your website, that you answer any of their questions, you make sure that everything on there makes you the best choice for them to choose. So it might be that they just want to know if you do call outs, or maybe they want to know how much your pricing packages are so that there's no surprises. How can you make sure that that information is front and center and that they can find it really easily? Maybe they want to know that you are trusted and respected. So where can you put some customer testimonials on your site? So again, it's really easy for your customers to find, and they can think, okay, there's heaps of 5-star reviews. These people know what they're doing. They've got really transparent pricing. I'll go with them. So understanding how your customers are feeling along that journey can be really important to create not only content, but maybe features that they might need on your site to let them do what they need to do. What we want to do is understand these sort of troughs, these bits where they're feeling really nervous or anxious or annoyed or whatever it might be, and solving these problems on your website to make it a better experience for them. So because I like a dramatic statement, we're basically looking at whose life is getting improved and how. So who is actually your user? How are you improving their life, or what's happening in their life that you can make sure that your business is the one that they go to make it better, and how are we actually going to do that? So a couple of UX basics is truly understanding our users, understanding the problem that we're trying to solve so that we can make sure that we solve it in the way that is right for our users. And again, accessibility, which is about making sure everyone of any kind of range of ability or disability is able to use our site effectively. So when we're talking about our users, again, we're talking about who is using our digital products or websites. Are they the same as our target market? So you might have a target market for your business, you might have a range of demographics, income, have certain needs, but perhaps you can drill down a little bit further to break those up a bit into more specific types of users that have quite specific needs. Who's actually looking on your website and who's actually buying? Is it who you think it is? Is it who you originally set out to be your target market? Is there anybody that's surprising in the trends of who's actually buying from your site? A lot of businesses say, you know, who's your target market for? And they say it's for everybody. And technically that might be true. Maybe your product or service could be for everybody, but it's pretty hard to accommodate everybody. So realistically, there will be a certain segment of people that are your core customer group, are your core users. So can you tighten that and narrow that down? And on the flip side, are we able to pivot or expand your target market or your users? Is there a surprising type of customer that's using your site or buying your products that you can actually start talking to and putting content or putting features on your site that help them do what they need to do, or expanding your messaging to include those people. So how do you actually know who your users are? How can you find them out? There is a whole range of ways that you can do this. So you can do user research. So things like surveys, you can send those out in your emails to existing users to find out what their needs are or goals or motivations for choosing you or potentially a competitor. You can also do these with other agencies and other companies. There are companies set up for user research so that you can buy a segment of users to answer your surveys to get some qualitative data back. So this is sort of bulk information back. Surveys are great just to get a general overview of what people are doing and thinking and are categorized based on the questions that you ask. For a deeper dive on why people might have certain behaviors or why they might think a certain way, user interviews or one-on-one sessions are really great because you can ask people how they're feeling or why they make certain choices and just really drill down on kind of the heart of the problem or the heart of where they're coming from. Same with focus groups. That's kind of in-person groups where you can start understanding on a slightly bigger level what people are thinking about. You can have in-product pop-ups. So on your website, you can have little pop-ups to capture moments of how people are feeling or what they're thinking about. You can have customer support interactions. So these could be emails or phone calls. Could be complaints. So understanding why someone might be frustrated. Where did things go wrong that their expectations weren't met? How can you change that or make certain information clearer perhaps on your site so that you don't get those sorts of interactions or complaints? And you can even do competitor analysis. So who are your competitors targeting and how could you maybe take inspiration from them? You can use tools like ChatGPT even to kind of get a clearer understanding. So of course, with any kind of AI, generative AI tools, you need to kind of check the results, but they're a really great place to start. So you could go to ChatGPT and, for example, say, what are the main user personas of, or the main users of this website? And it might not be purely accurate, but there might be some things in there that come up that resonate with you or that you hadn't thought of before. So that could be a nice way just to quickly do some desk research to find out who might be a user on your site.
Yeah, and we were saying yesterday, Emily, how amazing ChatGPT actually is for this. I was surprised that this was also a use we could have for it. And I know in March, we're going to be diving a little deeper into ChatGPT in some of our workshops. So make sure here's my little plug for our ChatGPT month in March. But I was shocked. I'm like, oh, there's so much more to ChatGPT than just, write an email for a blog post for me.
100%. And there's also an extension for ChatGPT that I think is even available for free accounts, free users, which is called, I think it's AIPRM or something like that. And they have basically ready to go prompts for all ranges of business. So they do it for UX, they do it for marketing, all ranges of business. And you can just plug in very limited information. They'll give you the prompts on what that information is. And they can spit out things like competitor analyses, user personas, which we'll talk about in a second. Yeah, all kinds of things that can be really helpful, that you don't even have to think about what do I need to ask ChatGPT in order to get the results that I want. So yeah, definitely worth a little play around in there. So personas. So we've talked about customers, we've talked about users, and now just to throw another label in there, we've got personas or user personas. So personas are basically collections of people that share the same traits or demographics or needs and motivations and goals that you can cluster into one type of person so that you know who to talk to in your messaging. So you know what kind of content to put on your site, what kind of features you might need to have available. You can have multiple personas for a business that all have slightly different needs. And there are lots of different ways of creating a persona, but generally these are the types of things that we look at. So we look at the background or the context of why a person might be coming to your website or interacting with your brand or your business. What's happening in their life for them to kind of show up in your world. Demographics, so things like age, income, location, education. Not all of those demographics are always important. Sometimes, for example, age doesn't really matter for your product, but maybe it does. So you don't always have to include absolutely every type of demographic. But if it's relevant to your business because maybe it changes how you talk to your customers, then you can include it. Behaviors and habits. So what do they do? What do they believe? What else is happening in their life that might change how they interact with your business? So for example, are they, busy all day with work and the only time that they end up browsing the internet is before they start work or at the end of the day on the couch with their mobile. So therefore, do you need to make sure that the mobile experience of your website is really good and anything that's really important for them to see is at the top of the page so they find it first. What are their pain points or frustrations? So what problems do they have that you might be able to solve with your product or with your website? What motivates them to actually make this purchase? So what is it that's driving them to look for a product or service like yours? What are their needs and wants? So, and this doesn't have to be product or service related. This could be on your website as well. So it might be in the shopping cart flow. They want to make a purchase really quickly. They don't want to have to input their personal details and their bank details twice. So is there a way that you can copy it over to both straight away? So are there things on your are there things that your user needs to do on your site that you can add or change to make that better? And what are some technological details? So how tech savvy are they? Maybe what type of device are they on or likely to be on? For example, are they likely just to be scrolling through lots of clothing on your website and just waiting until they find a t-shirt that they like the look of? Or actually, is it a bigger decision and do they need a big screen to look at all the detail? So are they more likely to wait until they're at home and can see it on a desktop? So what's happening in their life that informs what you put on your website and maybe how you talk about it. And so you can have multiple personas, but you might have a primary persona. So this is the person that you are kind of aiming at most, and that will cover off most of the features and functions and content on your site, but not to ignore some of these secondary personas as well that might have really specific, although niche needs, that you can make sure that your website caters to all of these types of people. So now that you know who your user is, you've done a bit of research, you understand kind of who it is that you're talking to and who you need to solve problems for. What is the actual problem we're trying to solve for our users? So is it something that they need? Is it a frustration that they have that maybe there's a bug on your website and they can't see the image, they might go to a product page and there's no image loading. So is that a frustration? Is there a way that you can make sure that that is seamless and there's no errors? Are we trying to solve an anxiety for your users? So for example, perhaps you sell clothing. Maybe an anxiety for a user is they're not really sure what size to buy. And they don't want to have to buy it, realize it's wrong, send it back. That's not a great experience. So is there a way that you can add a sizing chart that shows measurements and the corresponding size on your site? Is there, like I said before, a different kind of device that they might be using, and how can we make sure that the experience is really good on both desktop and mobile, even tablet, if that's something that they're likely to be on? So what are we actually trying to solve? And once we know their problem, then we can start trying to design solutions.
I just wanted to say, Emily, in that last slide, I'm glad you found that GIF of my inner toddler who, when gets frustrated with any kind of website, just throws the computer across the room.
Well,
and
right?
I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. But yeah, just had to point that one out.
We've all been there. We're just like, and you give up and you go somewhere else, or you just throw the computer out the window. We've all been there. So again, how do we actually define what the problem is? So we can look at what the scenario is, and that could be a life scenario, what's happening in the user's life, what kind of problems we're trying to solve for them that's related to our business. Maybe it is just a corner of our site. So maybe it is people aren't finding the right product because it's in a rogue category. It's not where people expect to find it, or there's no search functionality, so they can't find it. So maybe what is the scenario we're looking at? What are the user's goals or expectations? So perhaps they expect to do a certain task because that's how they do it on a competitor website, or other websites in general. That's sort of a universal way of doing something, but that's not how it works on your site. So maybe their expectations are a bit different. What tasks they're trying to complete on the site. So maybe it's browsing, maybe it's adding to basket, maybe they want to add it to a wish list. They're not ready to purchase yet, but they don't want to go, they want to have a think about it and come back again. So what are they trying to do? And can you make sure that it's really easy for them to complete those tasks? How are they feeling at each stage? So are they really excited and just want to make the purchase straight away? Are they a little bit nervous? So what areas of anxiety can we help and make sure that we're taking those away so we are that easy, obvious choice to make? And how can we ensure that they've got the right information at the right time and the right functions for them to complete a task? So whether that is sending emails with promo details, and they come to your site and it's not quite clear where that promo is. So making sure that imagery and language is consistent across the touch points, and they've got everything that they need to do to complete tasks at the right time. So when we're talking about users, and user experience, we're keeping our user at the heart of everything that we do and the heart of everything that we design. So there's, not surprisingly, something called user-centered design, which is literally that. We are prioritizing the user's needs and preferences and behaviors, often above perhaps what we think we need to do as a business. If that's what the user needs and wants, that's really what we should be making sure that we do so that they can do those things. User-centered design looks at the usability of the product, website specifically. So is it intuitive? Is it easy to learn? You shouldn't really need any onboarding if it's a pretty straightforward website, or maybe you do. Maybe it's a complicated product that you have and you need to handhold your users throughout so they know what to do at each stage. Is it efficient to use? Clarity and consistency of design elements, content, language, and navigation. So I mentioned before, button shape and size and color. Is that the same across your site? Is it obvious where a button has been clicked or hovered? Is the language that you use consistent and on brand? So in one place it sounds really friendly, in another place it sounds really technical. It's there a bit of a disconnect. Or perhaps even it's the messaging that you have in your social ads. They come to your website and is there a little bit of a mismatch? So how can we make sure that they always feel like they're in the same world, part of the same family? And navigation, is the menu icon always in the same place so they know where to go? Do drop-down menus act as they expect and act consistently across your site? So just being really clear and consistent across your website and all those other touch points. Design inclusively to accommodate users with diverse ability and needs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later with accessibility. And incorporate user feedback and iterate on your designs continuously. So if you do get feedback, whether it's positive or negative from customers, how can you use that to improve your website and constantly keep it fresh and updated to make sure that it's always focused on what the user needs?
And Emily, as we were talking about this and we're talking about the user experience and we're looking at funneling in from our socials, from our email marketing, from LinkedIn, from anywhere else that you are marketing your product, we are funneling it all into the website, right? So we're looking at user experience broadly and then specifically within the website. Is that right?
Exactly. And usually your website is the thing you've got most control over. So on social media, you've got control over what your posts look like, maybe the messaging and the color, but all the functionality and the liking and the sharing, that's all within the social platform. Whereas on our website, we've got control over those sorts of things and that kind of function. You might have an agency or someone else that manages your website for you, but you can still have input around what you think might be important for your users to add to your site. So that's something that we can control. But yeah, exactly. We're trying to funnel everything to our website where we can let people make purchases or book an appointment or whatever it might be that they need to do there. So there are a bunch of different stages to user-centered design, and actually there's a whole bunch of different frameworks, but kind of focus on similar things. At the beginning, it's all around discovery. So what is the actual problem we're trying to solve? Then we look at areas that we can focus on within that problem, really honing in on, so maybe we know that there's something wrong with the shopping cart experience, and then we hone in and we realize, actually, it's because there's not a way for our users to remove something from the basket. So how might we allow users to do that? Then we look at possible ways that we can solve that problem. There's often loads of different ways to solve a problem. So we look at various ideas. Maybe we run it past a few people to see, does that make sense, before landing on the solution and delivering it. So you might have also heard of design thinking, slightly different framework, but follows a really similar path. So empathize, so doing some research to understand your user and the problems you're trying to solve, defining the problem, ideating on solutions. They've got prototyping in here. So again, building real representations of your design solutions, testing them with real users, or if you don't have real users, at least your friends and family, to say, does this make sense? Is there anything else that you'd expect to be able to do? Is there any confusion? Can I simplify it before you implement it on your site? So it's understanding your user, understanding the problem, creating a bunch of things that might solve that problem, and then honing down on the final solution before you implement it. A nice way of framing your problems is using a user story. And this structure works really nicely. So as a user persona, I want to perform this action so that I can accomplish this goal. So you can break down all your problems or all your tasks into this type of user story so that you can refer back to it and make sure that whatever solution you have designed solves this problem. So putting it into a bit of context, maybe busy mum is a persona that you have. So as a busy mum, I want a quick way to see family-friendly holiday packages so that I can eliminate any destinations that don't cater to families. Or perhaps you have a cafe or a restaurant and vegan is a persona. As a vegan, I want to view an up-to-date menu so that I can confirm if this restaurant caters to my dietary needs. So you might say, okay, so I need to include a menu on my website. Where would I put that? Is it easy to find? And how would I let my vegan friends know that those items on my menu are suitable for them? So you can do those in a number of different ways, but this is a nice way just to sort of frame your problem and keep your user at the heart of it.
I love this, Emily. I love how this formula is just so streamlined and simple. And it's a really easy way for us with all of the things that we need to try to gather, all the information we're gathering for our marketing, our user personas, who we're selling to, what we're selling, all of that. When you can boil it down into this one little sentence, you can go from there. So I find this to be a really powerful tool here.
Yeah, it's a great one. And this is a very standard structure. So if you forget this, you can always just search for user story or user story formula, and you should, something like along those lines will pop up. This might be getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty, but if you're really keen on it, there are some design techniques that we can use to try out some of these ideas before actually implementing them on your website. So there's wireframing, prototyping, high fidelity designs, and then iterating, so continuously improving on these. So wireframing is literally the bare bones of what you're trying to do. So for example, maybe you are wanting to promote events on your website. You know that you'll probably have some kind of heading and description of what that event is, maybe a picture. You'll have details of when and where it is, and maybe a way for your users to add it to their various calendar types. So it's got really minimal detail. It's basically just about mocking up roughly where things might go. Prototyping is then looking at what are the interactive elements. So what happens when you click on something? Does it highlight? Does it hover? Does a label pop up? What does that look like? What happens if you click or scroll or swipe? Where does it take you to next? You can do this. It doesn't necessarily have to be in any kind of design program or any digital program. You can just mock this up on pen and paper. It just helps you understand, okay, if I click that, what happens next? What information do my users need to know that they're making the correct choice? So, for example, this has a label to say that you're adding it to the Google Calendar rather than any other calendar. So how can we make sure that it's really clear to users what's happening? And then high fidelity designs are once we actually add in all the real copy, any colors and imagery that we might need, and sort of the final look and feel. And you can test this with users, or again, friends and family or colleagues, to see, is there anything from this design that's missing? Is there anything else our users might want to know or be able to do before you can then use this and actually add it to your website and go live with it? The great thing about websites is that you can always change them. It's different to in the olden days, when everything was done in print. Once you make a print decision, that can be a costly thing to change. Whereas at least with a website, usually, especially if you've got access to the controls, if something's not working or something's wrong, you can go in and change it relatively quickly. So we talked a little bit earlier around how do you know what's working or what's not. This is where measuring and testing is really important. So you can see that the change that you have made is improving your user's life, or maybe it's not. Or maybe there are other things that they need as well. So ways that we can measure if what we've done on our website is working is through surveys. So you can ask people about maybe new features or functions that you've implemented or your experience with your site. Usability testing. So this is where you have an actual user, and again, it could be a friend or family member, to complete a series of tasks on your website while you're watching to see if they do what you expect them to do. So it might be that you say to your participant who's doing the usability testing, show me how you would add a pair of shoes to the shopping cart, and you will watch them try and find the shoe category in your menu. You will watch them navigate through your products. Where do they click? What are they expecting to happen? And you can ask them to speak aloud while they're doing this, so you can understand really why they're doing what they're doing, where they're having any pain points or friction of what they're trying to do, and do they complete the task as you expected, and is there anything else that you need to add in or change to make that experience smoother. You can get customer support interactions. So again, that might be not always complaints. Maybe it's some really great customer testimonials that you've got. That's awesome. You can then put those back into your website as testimonials. But that can be a great measure to see the improvements that you're making are having an impact on people. Data is a really important one, and you can use all sorts of sites. A lot of you might use Google Analytics, GA4, or HubSpot or Hotjar. Microsoft Clarity is a great one. It's free, and it gives a whole range of different measures to look at of what people are doing on your site. So you can have heat maps. So for example, this one here is how far do people scroll? So the information on your site, the important information on your site, are people even seeing it? Are they scrolling far enough to even get there? Or do you need to actually move some important call to actions or important information higher up on the page so that they see it before they exit the website? You can also look at where are people clicking. They've got heat maps to see, are they clicking on the menu? Are they clicking on your call to actions? Are they clicking on products, or are they whatever they're doing? So Microsoft Clarity, if you don't use any of the others and you're interested in getting some kind of analytics on your website, is a really great one to explore. User feedback, and again, that might be through customer interactions, emails, social media. Maybe there's comments on social channels that can help you know if what you're doing is helping and working. And you can rework existing features once you get this information back from your users, or you might need to develop new features in order for them to do what they need to do. And you can continue measuring and testing all the time. It's not a one and done thing. You can test periodically and just check in to make sure things are still fit for purpose, or maybe you might need to change them. So now we have got accessibility, which is a hot buzzword that you may or may not have heard about. So accessibility is ensuring people of all abilities can easily use our digital products. So sometimes people think, oh, that seems like a lot of work to make sure people that are low vision or blind or have physical disabilities.
Before we move on, Emily, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to go back, we've got a quick question about what we were talking about previously. So what's the difference between surveys and user feedback? Aren't surveys used to gauge user feedback?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It is yeah, totally. It's a way of capturing user feedback. User feedback in general is probably a bit of a generic term, a catch-all for other areas. So whatever that may be. So surveys, face-to-face feedback, social media comments, any feedback that maybe you've gathered from pop-ups on your site. So yeah, good catch. Yeah, so accessibility is making sure that everybody can use your website. And the great thing about it is if you cater to people with diverse needs, it actually makes it easier for everybody to use, because basically it makes things more simple, clearer, and hopefully easier for people to use. So we want to consider devices or technology that people might use to help interpret a website or a web page. So a lot of people who are low vision or blind might use something called a screen reader, which literally reads out everything that is on a page. So ways to help make that experience better for users using a screen reader is to make sure that your content has a clear heading, subheading, body copy, and clearly labeled button on what to do next. So that's really great for screen readers, but that's also great for just generally people coming to your website because it keeps the content nice and tidy. There's also legal implications. It's not in New Zealand yet, but in the US, companies get fined if they don't adhere to accessibility guidelines. More and more governments have accessibility guidelines as a mandatory thing that they include on their website. So there's no legal implications in New Zealand yet, but it's becoming worldwide global standards to make sure that we cater to everybody online. I really love this illustration because it shows that just because a permanent disability might affect a few of your users, actually, depending on the context or scenario, it could affect heaps of people. So we might look at somebody that is missing an arm. That's a permanent disability. So maybe when they're using a mobile device, they've only got one hand to click a button. If your buttons are right in the very center of a mobile, that might be quite difficult to reach. So maybe having it on the sides of the screen are easier for them to tap. But that's the same case for somebody that maybe has broken an arm or maybe is holding a baby and is just using one hand. So thinking about the context or scenario, you might feel like you're catering to the few, but actually it makes it better for everybody. So some typical things that we think about when talking about accessibility is color contrast. So here's another nice acronym for you, WCAG AA standard. So basically that's just world, I think it's contrast and accessibility guidelines. AA standards is sort of the minimum that you want. There's also AAA standards, but that's sort of gold level. And essentially it's making sure that your foreground and your background colors are contrasting enough that the things are really clear to read, specifically around text. We also look at hover states. So how do things change when your users hover over buttons? Yellow is a classic example when using white text. Very difficult to read, fails accessibility guidelines. Ways to change that is to darken the yellow, which is often not a great way to change it, especially say yellow might be your brand color. Brown is not exactly in the same vibe. So maybe instead of changing your yellow, you need to change your white text to something darker, whether that's black or a really dark brown to contrast it. Sometimes the contrast is really minimal in order to pass these guidelines. I put a link at the bottom there. WebAIM is a really great tool to check the contrast on your website. So you put a color in for your text and a color for your background, and it will tell you whether or not it passes it or fails at a certain font size. So you want to make sure that it passes at least AA standards. So you can see in this blue example, it's pretty okay to read on the left, but it actually fails. It doesn't take much to darken it to make it pass. So just that tiny adjustment makes it accessible for everybody. And this is also something that Google looks at in terms of ranking you higher in search results as well. They look at different accessibility areas. A combo I often see on websites is like lovely, beautiful lavenders. And again, you can see almost imperceptible, the text in this has changed. So not accessible on the left, slight darkening of the text on the right becomes accessible. Also, you can see that sometimes if the contrast isn't great enough, it looks like something's inactive. And that's, again, not great for everybody if it looks like it's not going to work. So maybe you can darken it up and put an outline around. So these look like buttons, but this goes for everything. This goes for all kinds of text on your site. Font size is a really big one as well. You don't want it to be too small. Something is like this is okay for metadata or tags or really small copy that's a little bit incidental, but you don't want to be using really tiny text for big bits of copy. You don't want to be using anything too big and fancy. It might look cool, but actually it's really difficult to read. And you want to make sure that your text has plenty of space to breathe. Having no space in between lines can be really overwhelming to read and a bit crunchy. Whereas if you have ample space, it's much easier to read. So accessibility guidelines say that the spacing between the lines of text should be 1.5 times the font size that you're using. So that's just a little calculation that you can do. And again, alt text we mentioned a little bit earlier. So this is the alternative text that you give to images on your site. So instead of naming it image_3265.jpg, that will mean nothing to somebody using a screen reader. You want to give it a nice descriptive image. But this is also really helpful for those occasions where maybe an image doesn't load properly for whatever reason. It gives all users context to what that image is. Also great for SEO because you can put keywords in here too. And for animations, if you've got any videos or animations, it's really good to give your users control to stop and start them. Because it might be people with epilepsy, ADHD, any other kind of neurodiversity. But actually, if I had this running all the time, it's really annoying for everybody. So giving your users control to pause or start or stop any animations that you have on your site is really important. So now it is your turn. Some homework for you guys, if you're up for it, is to try creating some user personas if you don't already, or having a look at your target market a little bit differently to see if you can build out some needs and motivations and pain points of your users and maybe how you could solve those. Using data or research, what are some of the problems that your users might be facing and how might you be able to solve them on your site? And where on your site could you improve the accessibility? So is there color contrast? Is there some tiny text or some too elaborate fancy text? Could you maybe update your image alt text labels? So you can have a little look around your site to see where can you make just some tiny changes that could have a really big impact on how your user interacts with your website and your business.
Yeah, and those of you who are here on Zoom with us live, I've popped a couple of the links into the chat for you. So clarity@microsoft.com or clarity.microsoft.com is the one for the data. Is that right, Emily? Is a tool for checking out your data. And then we've got on our platform on Digital Boost, there is a video about building customer personas. So if you want to look into that and dive a little deeper into that, I've got that link up for you. And then WebAIM, specifically for contrast, it's the contrast checker. But does WebAIM also look at accessibility of size, of the font size, or is it just the contrast I think we're looking at here?
That might be. I think this one specifically does contrast. I think it probably has a load of information around accessibility guidelines. But that little contrast checker tool, I use it all the time. And it's just a really quick and easy glimpse. It also has little color sliders. So if your colors do fail and you're thinking, well, what next? There's a little slider that you can slide until you pass accessibility, and then you can use that color and implement it on your site in all those instances. So yeah, it's a real juggle between balancing brand colors and accessibility, but there are ways around just making little tweaks to darken things to make sure that contrast is good for everybody to read, so that it's really easy at a glance to see what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting old like me and you need these to see something.
Or just
Yeah.
even when you think about if you're looking at a screen in a bright light, if the contrast isn't very good, it's quite difficult to read at the best of times. So all kinds of contexts and scenarios. If your contrast is better, it's better for everybody.
All right. So any questions? I'm going to check and see if anybody has got any questions. Thank you for those questions earlier, everyone. I hope your questions got answered during the course of this presentation. I'm just going to take a quick look around where we are streaming our streaming sites, and I don't see anything. If you wanted to pop a quick question in, let me know. Otherwise, Emily, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come here and share this information with us. Your UX experience, marketing knowledge, all of it is so vast and really, I have no words. I have no more words left.
Thank you. No, my pleasure. Great to be here as always. But yeah, I think there's so many great resources on Digital Boost around personas, customer empathy mapping, customer experience in general. And of course, Checkable, there's a whole section on Checkable around customer experience, which includes checking the accessibility of your website and some other key areas of your site that you might want to make improvements. So I definitely go and have a look over there. They're great tools, just at least to get started and kind of see what you've got to work with.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions that weren't answered here, or maybe you watch the recording later and some more questions pop up, reach out to us at support@digitalboost.co.nz and we can answer all of your questions there. Hopefully, we can answer all the questions of the universe there. Lovely to see you all. We'll catch you on Thursday for our next workshop about AI. I know we love AI, so if you're curious about it, go onto the platform, press that little plus button and get your RSVP in, and I will see you then. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Matewa.